Today, I want to talk about an anime called Yuuki Yuuna is a Hero, or Yuuki Yuuna wa Yuusha de Aru. The English title is pretty much a direct translation of the Japanese title, so you don't really have to, I guess, memorize one or the other, but I'm going to talk about it anyways, and why it's so dear to my heart, why you should watch it, and why I think it really beats out a lot of other anime in the same type of field. So make sure you do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share the channel and the video, and if you enjoy this, I will be putting out more. I actually have one more planned, I just have to write the script for it. So anyways, let's get started. Yuuki Yuuna is a Hero is not anything overly exciting visually, and there aren't many different venues that the anime takes, that being a lot of different places that the anime will take you to that you'll see, like a coffee shop, a school. There is a school, don't get me wrong on that part, or a park, or a bunch of other places like that that are very important to the story and the setting and the overall character development. However, do not let that fool you. The lack of variety in the setting is not something to overlook. Just because there's not as many places that this anime takes place in terms of a setting or settings, does not mean that there's not a good plot or a good story behind the anime. Just because we're not used to an anime that moves around a whole lot or has a whole lot of different places such as Attack on Titan, or a bunch of different places like Sword Art Online especially, or even anime like Beatless, that really the setting is very important to the overall plot and the overall story of the anime. Those socks you're wearing, this anime is gonna knock those right off your feet. Overall, the anime is pretty vibrant and has a really decent color palette. The lack of decent art does not detract from this anime, and as a matter of fact, it does have decent art. Furthermore, the use of various character-specific moves or animations is not necessarily a new concept, but Yuuki Yuuna, or Yu for short, takes this concept and turns it on its head. The anime has a total of about 24 episodes across 2 seasons, 26 if you add in the 2 recap episodes known as Episode 0, and those are specifically for Season 2. Season 2 is a little bit weird in terms of how it's structured. There is a sequel, but there's also a prequel to Season 1. You have to watch the prequel to Season 1, which is in Season 2, before you watch the sequel to Season 1, which is also in Season 2. Yuna, Itsuki, Togo, Fu, and Karin make up the primary focus of the anime as a whole, all of whom are highly unique characters and not just your typical Mahou shoujo. Season 1 focuses on these 5 characters, these 5 girls, until Season 2 where the prequel begins the second season with, quote, 3 all-new characters. I'll explain why 3 is not necessarily an accurate summary later. What makes Yuuki Yuuna stand out is its story in the way the second season is implemented with the third season on the way to further compound this. Let me explain without spoiling too much. Yu holds a special place in my heart, and I think that after you watch this video and the anime, you'll see why. The anime starts off without anything serious to its name and retains a mostly innocent atmosphere despite some very dark undertones.
去年お隣に引っ越してきたんだ。大親友なのに名字で呼んでいるのは本人の希望。
Yuna and Fu foreshadow some later parts of the anime within the first 3 minutes, but where Yuna hits the nail on the head is her character as the hero, while she and Fu are performing a play for the elementary children. While it is definitely an important plot piece, don't get me wrong, and what the entire anime is centered upon, it's not an important detail to spoil right now, simply because the actual title of the show literally translates to Yuuki Yuuna is a Hero. Duh. Yuuki Yuuna takes the primary notion of a magical girl who must fight to defend what she holds dearest and puts it on a spinning wheel with no favorable outcomes when the spinner stops. Where Yu begins to deviate from the typical storyline of magical girl versus evil, magical girl must protect sacred beings, is when the anime pins these very tasks on 4 other girls, the Sanchu Middle School Hero Club. The club starts out with 4 characters who all share a relatively strong bond. Itsuki and Fu are sisters and share an arguably even stronger bond. Yuna and Togo are neighbors, but whether this was purely coincidental or a setup remains to be seen, and you'll see why I say that towards the end of the Season 2 prequel. This is an excellent example of dramatic irony. Yuna and Togo don't know what's going on, and why their closeness is ironic to begin with, but we do, which is what makes it so ironic. In fact, Togo herself is a great personification of irony itself, and she won't be the only one. At the same time this is a dramatic irony, this is also a very sad irony, and you're gonna have to watch this to really understand why. Yuuki Yuuna can seem kind of innocent on the surface, but there are a lot of contradictions within the anime that really bring forth all of these dark undertones. The actual motive behind the Hero Club was simply to give back to the community and lend their hands towards the betterment of it through things like community service. But this simple initiative to give back quickly turns into the very embodiment of the name of the club itself. Yuna and friends are tasked with a fight that will not only test their strengths as human beings, but their very willpower to defend what must be protected at all costs. Without warning, the girls are plunged into an unknown world where everything they knew as their reality is quickly taken away. Caught in the middle of a war between gods, Yuna and her friends are tasked with defending not only their hometown and community, but humanity as a whole. Now, humanity itself is a tricky subject to abjectly describe and describe fairly without bias, so let me pose a question. If you suddenly learned that everything you thought you knew to be reality and creation and higher divine power or powers was suddenly made irrelevant to the actual reality, what would you do? More dramatic irony. This is precisely the very question Yuna has to fight for an answer to, and it isn't just her. Nor was she the first to discover everything she thought she knew was nothing more than a fabrication meant to protect humanity from the harsh truth. While the actual fabric of reality itself is intact and time still moves forward, there is reasonable doubt as to why the actual happenings or consequences and truth were covered up. Once Yuna and her friends discovered that what they were fighting for was all of humanity, the harsh truth slowly marched on until it collided with not only Yuna and her friends, but Yuna's world as well. Yuna is afflicted in ways the other girls aren't, and it's another example of the very sad irony that this anime really encompasses. It's this very situation that Yuna finds herself in that is one of the greatest things about Yu. Yuna is forced to make a decision during the Season 2 sequel that literally changes the entire course of the anime itself. While most characters say something like, "I'll find a way to change that fate," and they do, Yuki Yuuna takes that trope and says, "Instead of making bread, how about we take this dough and make 1 cake, 5 rolls, and 2 pizza crusts?" Testament to the various ways in which Yuna faces an impossible threat that has almost zero hope of resolution, but instead of giving up or winning an impossible fight via the power of friendship, Yuna herself does everything in her power, literally, to do what she knows is right and what has to be done. Even if it meant risking her own life to save the lives of her friends and all of humanity. Before I get too deep into Yu, I do need to talk about the way the Season 2 6-episode sequel and prequel to Season 1 are written and how that writing is transferred into the anime. Basically, what you end up watching. The writing is generally pretty dynamic. Every episode starts off slow and gradually builds into its own climax that could arguably create its own separate branching storyline. This is not obvious in Season 1, and truthfully, it really isn't even there. Season 2 takes on an entirely new and unique way of storytelling while it continually advances the plot even during the prequel, which is not an easy task. Each character across all 24 unique episodes undergo some incredibly unique character development to the point that at the end of the sequel, you barely recognize them anymore. Every single little detail is so incredibly important to the overall plot of the story. For example, and I'm gonna have to spoil this one, but Itsuki's dream to sing well. The contradiction to this very desire can only be best described as dramatic irony. This personification of dramatic irony quickly develops into a very serious situation. Itsuki's own irony remains perhaps the strongest example of such irony, as she's the first to experience what the price is for defending the gods. This has to be one of the greatest examples of contradiction in anime. This very same contradiction quickly evolves into very dangerous and reckless situations. What the Hero Club expects versus what they actually receive is so ironic that it's like if we were talking about snow and you look out your window and there's 8 inches on the ground. It isn't just Itsuki who becomes the literal embodiment of contradiction either. And again, as a matter of fact, this entire anime is one massive work of irony. The literary elements that are incorporated into Yu are so well placed and devised that I would be hard pressed to find another anime or think of one that is as literarily diverse as Yu. There really isn't anything else I can tell you or say without spoiling too much or spoiling much more. Yuki Yuuna as a Hero is an incredible anime full of diverse characters, intense battle scenes, emotional storytelling, and plenty of moments that will absolutely tear your heart right out of your chest.